Thank you so much, Mr. Prakash. And thank you for joining us, Dr. Anand, Ranganathan. Please give him a huge round of applause. Thank you so much. I now request Gitanjali member Pallavi Chalani from Avendus Capital to please present the bouquet to Dr. Anand Ranganathan. Please welcome Ms. Pallavi Chalani with a round of applause. Thank you so much for joining us, sir, and thank you, Pallavi, for doing the honors. Thank you to both our guests for joining us. And now it's my absolute honor and privilege to invite Dr. Vikram Sampath to please speak and join us on the podium. So would you like to speak from there? Anything works. If you're comfortable.
You want to take these? I don't want to spill water on it.
No, it's okay, sir.
A very good evening, everyone. It's a great honor, a great privilege and pleasure to be here amongst all of you and to share my thoughts before my very dear friend, and as he alleges that he's my younger brother, takes over from me and speaks about a topic which, when it first was told to me, I was wondering, when Raviji called me and said the topic of the conclave is India 2047, my first reaction was 2047 BCE, because I thought he'd contacted someone who is not qualified for the topic. I'm a historian who looks back and not so much of looking in the front. So I said, no, it's actually CE only. We're looking at 2047 CE and what India would be at that stage of her history. I then, was thinking intensely about how will I make it relevant to a set of people whose profession I've actually washed my past sins off. I have been, one among you as a finance professional in my earlier avatar. I did my MBA from this very city at SP Jain in finance, and I'm so honored and proud to have my professor from SP Jain, Professor Uma Narayan, who's here. And I'd make a horrible student when it comes to finance, at least. So what do I tell about history to finance professionals that leave your profession and take up history? Certainly not. I'm sure Gitanjali Express will never call me again if I did that. And Anand also keeps saying that the main feature of all his lectures is he only gets invited to any place only once. And I think I'm trying to follow him very closely. But even when you're driving, there's always the rear view window which you look at along with the windshield. You shouldn't keep staring at the rear view window, otherwise you'll go and hit something else. But a look at the rear view window while driving, just as that gives us a sense of what path we have traversed. I think in the history of a nation, in the history of a civilization, seeing where we have come from, what is the path we have traversed, I think that becomes very quintessential if we actually need to know where we need to be about 100 years from now. So I'm going to talk to you today briefly. I'm also going to be speaking later in the evening for the launch of my latest book, which Gitanjali Express was very kind to host, on Tipu Sultan. So I'll keep this intervention slightly brief and give those extra 30 seconds and more to Anand, as he always hogs in all the TV shows every night. So now when we talk of India, 100 years from now or 50 years from now or during the Amrit Kal, what is our concept of nationhood, and how much does history or an understanding of it or a wrong understanding of it actually color that sense of nationalism and future goals for the country? That's very important to consider. Now, I must share here that as a student in school, I think the maximum punishments that I got in my life was for history. I would always be found kneeling down outside the class because just memorizing those dates, who succeeded whom, which year, which war was fought, extraneous details which didn't make any sense to me, and I'm sure to a lot of you while you were studying. But as you grow up, you realize that history is that mirror in which you can identify yourself as a nation, as a civilization, and as a people. And I think our colonial masters, they understood this very, very well. And after independence, the rulers as well. And so as George Orwell, the English novelist, had said, he who controls the past controls the future. This understanding of our past, our own identity, was something that our colonial masters, the British, very carefully captured and controlled. And so I'll just list 3 or 4 such anomalies in our understanding of our own past, which in some way is going to affect how we are looking at ourselves both in the present and thereby chart a course for ourselves for the future. The first concept is we are always told that, and a lot of us, all of us educated Indians subliminally somewhere believe that India was not even a nation, that we were a disparate group of warring states who were fighting with each other, and it was the British who unified us and gave us that sense of nationhood, gave us culture, gave us education, railways, hospitals, what have you. And in fact, that seed of "you're not even a nation" was sown in our minds by, again, our colonial masters, the British. Sir John Strachey, who was the head of the Imperial Civil Services for the new recruits who came to the ICS, one of his first sentences or advice to everybody was, the first thing that all of you need to remember is that there never was an India and there never is an India. So that's why I think that concept has come deep down, embedded in our minds even after so many years. And of course, you have those infamous minutes of Macaulay, Thomas Babington Macaulay, in 1835, when he said the entire objective of English education is to create this vast group of interpreters between us, the ruling class, and the millions we govern, who are Indian in their skin color, in their blood, but they are British in their tastes, in their opinions, in their morals, and their intellect. And I think this Macaulay, James Mill, and Strachey version of looking at ourselves, looking at our identity, is deeply seeped in all of us. That, as I said, we were not a nation at all, and it was someone from the outside who came and gave us this sense of nationhood. But what do the facts of history say about this? If we go back to our scriptures, one of the oldest, scriptural texts, Vishnu Puran, very, very clearly enunciates, Uttaram yat samudrasya himadrashchaiva dakshinam varshatad bharatam nama bharati yatra santati. This entire landmass, north of the oceans and south of the Himalayas, that landmass is called Bharat. Varshatad bharatam nama. Varsha, as in country, is Bharat, and उनकी संतति भारतीय कहलाते हैं. Their children are called Bharatiyas. What more can be a more clear enunciation of what Bharatvarsha is? In our pujas, when we do the Sankalp itself, there is Jambu Dvipe, Bharatavarshe, Bharatakhande. We are circumscribing that sacred geography, saying this is the expanse of this country. Politically, borders can change. You know, what India was in 1946, after 47 it changed. What Andhra Pradesh was maybe 15 years ago, it is now divided. So also what Pakistan at 1947 split into Bangladesh and Pakistan. So political borders can change, and that is the difference between a nation and a nation state. A nation state is defined by common borders, territorial borders, codified laws, common laws, and all of that. But what is a nation which goes much beyond just these laws? And does the laws or the constitution only give us that sense of nationhood, or is there a civilizational idea of India which far predates this idea of what we are? And there, as I said, right from our Puranic texts, and also the manner in which, sorry, I'm having a very bad throat, the manner in which our different sacred spots are scattered across the country. We have the 51 Shakti Peeths. We have the Bara Jyotirling, we have the 7 Puris. Now, all of these are not confined to one particular part of India. They are scattered across the entire, the geographical expanse of this country. And when Adi Shankaracharya in the 8th century, he goes all the way from a little village in southernmost part of this country in Kerala. He lived all of 32, 33 years. He did not have gone and established or done this Digvijaya campaign across the country 2-3 times. Now, when he went from Kerala to, say, Maharashtra or to, the northern parts of the country, no one said, you're a foreigner, you can't enter. You need a visa to enter here. So, nor did he face any kind of enmity. And why then, if you see, he actually establishes the 4 mutts in the 4 cardinal points of this country: Sringeri in the south, Puri in the east, Dwarka in the west, and Badrinath in the north. And at the top of all that, Kashmir as the Sarvagnya Peeth, the all-knowing knowledge center, whose presiding deity was goddess Sharda, and the script was also Sharda. And so destruction of Kashmir was the first step in the destruction of the intellectual capital of this civilization. So while all these, distribution of our pilgrim centers, it gives us a sense of not only a non-parochialism. Suppose I feel my state, my place is the most sacred. There are 10 others, 100 others who are as pure, as sacred, if not more. And in that conception of nationhood also came the environment. We worship everything from mountains to rivers to forests to animals, where I think faith, along with patriotism, along with concern for nature and this whole thing of sustainability that we talk of, is so deeply embedded and rooted in our civilizational consciousness. So the very first idea that there is no idea of India, that someone gave this idea from outside, I think all these various examples of the past totally debunk this myth that has been distilled into our heads. The second, myth or misconception about India that I would like to dispel in the course of my talk is that we are a nation of losers. People kept coming from outside, one after the other, and we kept capitulating in front of all of them. Now, even if you quickly, whatever little history you remember, at least I don't, considering, I used to be kneeling down outside, if you list the wars that we fought, or we learnt in our history textbooks, the Arab invasion of Sindh, or even earlier, Alexander, the Greeks, the Shakas, the Hunas, then Arab invasion, the Turks come, Muhammad Ghazni, Muhammad Ghori, and then you have the European powers, the Mughals, the European powers, the Dutch, Portuguese, the French, and of course the British. And all the battles, the Battle of Tarain, India and Indians lost, Battle of Buxar, India and Indians lost, all the Panipat wars, we lost, the Anglo-Mysore War, the Anglo-Maratha War, the Anglo-Sikh wars. The common thread in all of this is that India and Indians lost. Now, today, if we are the only pre-Bronze Age era civilization that is still alive and kicking, there must have been some wars that we won also, some courage that our poor ancestors showed also. There must have been some heroes and heroines who glittered in warfare as well in our country. And why is it then that those names are not something that we can readily recount? 5 wars that we won, we'll have to think quite a bit to actually recount this. So how do we think of India at 2047 if so deeply embedded in our operating system is that we are inferior, we are always subjugated by external forces? This concept also was brought in by the British, right from the Aryan invasion theory, that myth of the Aryan invasion theory, that everything in your civilization, right from your most ancient ancestors, your most ancient texts, were given to you by someone coming from the outside. And so we, the British, are only a software update, a version 2.0, so to say. And so it is your destiny, your karma to be ruled by people from outside. But as I said, since we have survived despite these centuries of attacks, we are probably the only country which has managed to keep its faiths, its religions, its languages, its customs, its costumes, its cuisines intact even after 800,000 years of invasions. That does speak something of the resilience that we showed as a civilization. So there are numerous people, 1 or 2 examples that I would like to give to buttress my point. Lalitaditya Mukta Pida of the Karkota dynasty of Kashmir. A show of hands, how many of you had heard of this man? Wow. That is like 0.0001% of this august group. And here was a man who was called the second Samudragupta, and he was somebody who ensured that the Arabs did not conquer beyond that narrow strip of Sindh. Now, after the death of the Prophet, when the Caliph's armies go all over for expansionist Islam, expansion of the religion and of the empire, within 50 years of the death of the Prophet, almost the whole of Africa, Central Asia, right from the Atlantic till the gates of India get Islamized. The Byzantine Empire, the Sassanid Empire, all of that. But do we realize that from the Arab invasion of Sindh in 712, it took 500 years, 5 centuries to establish the first Islamic Sultanate in India, the Delhi Sultanate. So for 500 years, our poor ancestors were pushing back, and the Arabs could not conquer beyond that narrow border of Sindh. And who were these people? It was people like Lalitaditya, it was Bappa Rawal of Mewad, it was Nagabhatta, it was Pulakeshin, it was Danti Durga, all names which don't strike a bell in any of our minds because we are not told that part of our past. So we are not a nation of losers. We've had our ancestors who've been constantly pushing back. There have been people from the state I come from, Karnataka. You had this lady called Rani Abbakka in a small little principality of Ullal in coastal Karnataka in Mangalore, and she manages to vanquish the Portuguese. The mighty Portuguese fleet in the middle of the night, using very rudimentary technology of the ammunition put into coconuts, ground coconuts, which was plentifully available in the coastal areas, that was scraped out in that the ammunition put, and in the middle of the night these hurled missiles burn an entire Portuguese fleet, and that news goes all the way to the Shah of Persia, and he's quite astonished to know who is this queen in this little principality of India who has managed to vanquish the Portuguese. Similarly, in Kerala, you had someone like Martanda Varma who managed to ensure that the Dutch East India Company was completely decimated. That particular point of time in the 18th century, the Dutch East India Company was highly expansionist, one of the first to be listed in the global stock markets and stock exchanges, and their axis of power was stretching from almost Africa to Japan, and India coming in the middle. But there was a battle called the Battle of Kolachal, where Martanda Varma defeats the Dutch, and after that, their entire, colonial ambitions in India actually collapse. But in any other country, you would have Martanda Varma statues adorning every street square. Every child would know who Martanda Varma is. But perhaps today, even in Kerala, thanks to the Marxist virus also that abounds there, I'm sure not many people there to know who this gentleman was. So there are numerous such examples. Rani Naiki Devi of Gujarat, a woman, Chalukyan, princess, who manages to defeat Muhammad Ghori. We always talk of Muhammad Ghazni came 17 times, Muhammad Ghori came so many times. What were we doing? Were we just sitting as, lame ducks, waiting for the next invader to come and plunder and loot and murder all of us? Naiki Devi destroys and defeats Muhammad Ghori in a battle called the Battle of Kasarhada, which was fought in 1176. And so, anguished is Ghori that, he is defeated by a woman that he never turns towards Gujarat again. So there are numerous such, tales of valor. And I'm not talking here of empty jingoism, chest beating and saying, Mera Bharat Mahan, everything about the past is great. No, there were mistakes we made too. And that is why we were colonized. But I think at the same time, a holistic view of what history needs to be. I think unless that is provided to all of us, having that self-respect, having that confidence to move forward, to 2047, I don't think that will be possible. A third, anomaly in our history is that there are several dark, chapters in our past. You have Will Durant, the American historian, talking about the Islamic conquest of India being one of the bloodiest tales of human history, not just Indian history, human history. Over just 500 years since the first Islamic conquest happened, almost 8 crores of the population, were annihilated. Several thousands and thousands of temples, probably lakhs of temples destroyed. women from this part of the country were pawned away in places like Ghazni. There is a minar there where it says, Duktare Hindustan, Nilame do dinar. For 2 dinars, the daughters of Hindustan are auctioned here. So rape, plunder, destruction. Our Princetons, our Oxfords like Takshashila, Nalanda, Vikramshila were ruthlessly destroyed. But what do we find today? You go and see the Nalanda ruins, and you just come a little outside that. The place is named Bakhtiyarpur in honor of Bakhtiyar Khilji, who destroyed Nalanda. And when he, attacked Nalanda and burnt it, it is said that the entire place burnt for 6 months. So many manuscripts which were there. In which other country of the world, ladies and gentlemen, would we actually valorize someone who destroyed our educational institutions and our Oxfords and Harvards? But we call it still, I love Bakhtiyarpur. We were recently on the way to Nalanda and we saw that, I love Bakhtiyar, I love Bakhtiyarpur. The historical amnesia that we have is shocking, and unless we correct that, moving forward is a very, very difficult proposition. It's a very hollow entity which will move forward. We may become economically strong, we may become militarily strong, but if that national character is not there, I don't think any of the other things would matter. And why do we do this? Why do we whitewash these crimes of the past? It is because somewhere we labor under a false misapprehension that talking these truths of the past, talking about these atrocities of the past will somehow upset social harmony today, that communities in India today will feel, very, very offended by this. Now, we talk about the atrocities of the British. Movies are made where British are villainized, but nobody thinks that by stating all this, the Christians of India are going to get, offended. Then why then do we not dare to talk openly, truthfully, and freely about the kind of atrocities, the wounded civilization that our ancestors had through the invasions of Ghazni, Ghori, Timur, who in December, I think 17th to 20th, in the conquest of Delhi, in one day, 1 lakh infidels were killed in Delhi. But we have Bollywood celebrities who also name their children after this great marauder. So all of this talks of either a willful caprice or historical amnesia. Tipu Sultan, about whom we'll talk later in the evening, is one such. Aurangzeb, about whom I've covered quite in detail in my previous book on the history of the Kashi Vishwanath Mandir. These all stare to us as examples where we are willfully closing our eyes to our own past and think that by talking about this, social harmony will get disturbed. But dare I say that the edifice of national unity and social cohesion cannot rest on the shaky foundations of whitewashed history. We have to, in the Indic imagination, the word itihasa translates to it thus happened. That is the Sanskrit translation. Ye aisa hua. Now, in that, just because you don't like it, you can't wish away your past. You have to state it in the way communities of today are not responsible for the excesses of anybody who came and did what they did. But the converse is also equally true, or should be true, that communities of today should not valorize these barbarians. They should not hyphenate themselves or associate themselves with these marauders. So this is another anomaly of the past, the third out of the 4 which I plan to cover here. The last of it, which I would like to speak before concluding, is our whole idea of how we won our freedom. Now there too, Bollywood comes to our help with all kinds of fanciful songs that De di hame azadi, bina khadg bina dhal, Sabarmati ke sant tune kar diya kamal. Did we get our freedom without any kind of sacrifice? Bina khadg bina dhal, is that how it happened? Are we fed with this myth that, like that Attenborough film, frame to frame, we kept saying, quit India, and one day the British got bored and said, okay, they're asking it so politely, so let us quit India. No, right from 1857, the first war of Indian independence, which was the word coined by the great man from this very state and city, Swatantravir Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, to 1946, which we unfortunately still call as the Naval Mutiny. It should ideally be called the last war of Indian independence, because just 3 weeks after that, you had the cabinet mission plan coming and negotiating independence, and the British left in a hurry. Because all through the worry of the British, the fear in their minds, which is documented, is they did not want a repeat of 1857. They did not want a Bagawat in the army, a revolt in the army. Because, even at the peak of the, Second World War, out of 2.5 lakh or so soldiers in the army, only 40,000 or thereabouts were Europeans. The rest of it were composed of Indians. So if even a small fraction of these Indian soldiers, if they revolted against the empire, the sun that never sets on the empire would set in no time. And so to prevent that, even the Congress was started as a safety wall, as they said, to give a few concessions to the Indians, give them some, concessions, mollify them and bring them so that there's no big Bagawat. But all through from 1857 to 1946, you had people like, again, from Maharashtra, Vasudev Balwant Phadke, the Chafekar Bandhus, Shamji Krishnavarma, Madam Bhikaji Kama, again from this very city. In Delhi, there is a place called Bhikaji Kama Place, but I'm sure a lot of Delhiites also don't know who this is. It's a man, woman, why is it named after her? A Parsi woman from this very city who goes all the way to London, leaves her husband, leaves her father-in-law, goes and joins the revolutionary movement in London and then Paris. Stellar, people who actually led the cause for complete independence. Much before the Congress could even think of it, in 1907, Bhikaji Kama and goes to the International Socialist Conference in Stuttgart and unfurls the flag of the first flag of independent India, which was designed by Savarkar and Hemchandra Das Kanungo of the Anushilan Samiti in Bengal. So even before, almost 20 years before the Purna Swaraj, which the Congress came up in 1930, you had the revolutionaries actually asking for complete liberation. From there, you had the Gadar movement in the First World War era, where transcontinental, imagine a movement at a time when there were no WhatsApp groups to actually communicate with each other. You were having these associations between India, Canada, San Francisco, Singapore and Southeast Asia, and also Germany and the European Union of today. People transcontinentally actually looking for a complete annihilation of the British power and a liberation of India. Then, of course, you had people like the HRA, Sachindranath Sanyal, Ram Prasad Bismil, Ashfaqullah, and Bhagat Singh Sukhdev Rajguru. All of it culminating in the Indian National Army of Rash Bihari Bose and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, who again employ the same tactic. Create an insurrection in the British Indian Army, get even a small portion of them to defect to the patriotic side, and that is what ultimately led to our freedom. But even this, the spirit of Kshatriya, the Kshatriya spirit or the warrior spirit in us, how willfully it has been subdued, that without doing anything, we just making salt actually didn't get us freedom. A lot of people, gave a lot of themselves, of their families, lives, livelihoods sacrificed, and it was a hardly won freedom. It was not given by anybody as, in a charity or a bheek to us. So I think all these concepts of the past, whether it is of ancient India, our idea of a nation, or the medieval truths, the uncomfortable truths of our past, or the tales of valor of our ancestors, or the very idea of the foundation of a modern independent India, on what basis was that formed? Unless I think we get a holistic picture of all of this, India at 2047, in my view, ladies and gentlemen, would be a very, very hollow being, which is great on the outside, but shallow from the inside. So, with this, thank you so much for your patient hearing, and I pass on the baton to my dear friend Anand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sampath, once again for joining us. Please give him a huge round of applause. Thank you, sir. And now it's time for me to invite another special guest on the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a huge round of applause for Dr. Anand Ranganathan. Please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What an absolute honor it was to listen to Vikram. Absolutely stirring talk that he gave that has really made it almost impossible to follow Vikram, and say what I want to say. But I think is it possible to get a headset so I could, if not, then do we have a headset? Yeah.
Check.
We don't have a headset? Okay. And can we have the presentation in the background? Nani? Thank you. I think I'd possibly prefer. Okay, I think this is all right. Yeah. So I think it should keep on moving by itself. So once again, thank you very much to Gitanjali Express and to Raviji in particular for inviting me. But before I start, I want to take a photograph of all of you. This is a proof that half of nation's GDP is being managed by all of you. And I'll send this photograph to Rahul Gandhi so he'll redistribute all your wealth. When Raviji said that you're going to be giving a talk in front of 400 chartered accountants, I can't remember when the last time I was this nervous. I think possibly when I proposed to my wife. But it's an absolute honor. It's a privilege. And Vikram so enthusiastically and so movingly talked about our history, 2047 BCE, as he said. I'm going to be talking about 2047 going forward. But I think if there is one thread that I would like to associate or join with what Vikram has said, it is a fact about that if, as Vikram correctly said, we have amnesia about our past, then the next hour I would like to spend about our apathy towards our future. And I think both of them are very important. And both of them are connected in some way. Amnesia about our past, as I say, nations weaken not because of their past, but rather by how they are taught it. And Vikram gave us some incredibly moving examples of how wrongly we've been taught about our past. But moving forward, it is also bordering on ignorance about our future or what our future portends for us. In other words, apathy towards our future that is also going to shape our future, India's future. But before I begin, I'd like to say again, as a statutory warning that I gave to Raviji as well. I told him, look, I am always ever invited once to any gathering. So please be aware of that. And as an example, I provided to Raviji, one was, in fact, in his beloved city of your Kolkata. I was invited to a debate about the independence of media. And I went there and I said the media is completely subservient to the political class, and nowhere is it exemplified more than in Kolkata. You guys are absolute stooges of Mamata Banerjee and the dispensation, and it is shameful, and the biggest culprit is the Telegraph. And I didn't know the debate was sponsored by the Telegraph. So that was the last I heard from them. I think even they've blocked my number also. I don't get any invitation. Then quite recently after that, there was a program I was invited to called Politics and Beyond, and my turn came. And then I said, look, aren't we fed up of bashing the living daylights out of politicians all the time? I think the time everyone knows that the easiest people to bash are the poor politicians. The time has come for us to bash the living daylights out of our judges. Because if there is one pillar that is completely eaten by termites and about to collapse, it is the judiciary. You have 5 crore cases pending, 80,000 cases pending in the Supreme Court. You have 20 judges to a million population in India when you have 150 in America. You have 34% of High Court judicial positions lying vacant, 21% of all Indian judicial positions lying vacant. It's an absolute crying shame. 200,000 cases that are pending are of POCSO and rape related. There are some cases that are 35 years old. There is rampant nepotism. There is collegium system. Judges don't want others to appoint fellow judges. There is a High Court, for example, Punjab and Haryana High Court, where 34% of the judges are related to the people who work in that High Court. It's absolute calamitous. I mean, this is disgrace. And I said all this, and I went back to the dais, and the person sitting next to me was the Chief Justice of Allahabad High Court. I forgot where I had parked my car. I called Uber and I ran from there. So Raviji, this is a warning to Gitanjali Express. 2025, I might be an audience waiting outside there somewhere without a ticket. But it's a pleasure and a joy to come here and tell you what I want to talk about is something quite dear, and I dare say we haven't talked about this much. And the reason I want to talk about this is because this is something that I believe is fundamental to success. Now, as the adage goes, that success hides failure. And we've seen a human proclivity that people only want to talk about their successes, not about failures. And if you're a politician, then in the eye of a politician, you've never ever had a failure. Even if you get 99 seats, it looks like you got 99 out of 100 marks. I'm just saying. But what's the truth? Is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? Going forward, 2047, are we going to simply believe, as many people tell us, that we are immensely successful, let's not worry about the things that are the niggles, or they'll iron out with time and everything is absolutely hunky-dory, and let's move forward, 2047 is here, Amrit Kal is here, everything is fine? Or are we going to take stock objectively to realize if the glass might be half full? We want it brimming, but why is it half full? What are the reasons why it is half full? So I think in the next hour or so, I'd like to spend time on that, talking about success, talking about the fundamentals of success. But I think before I delve into that, it is also a fact that, yes, we have been reasonably successful as a nation. I would be lying if that wasn't the case. If you were to look at where we started from, and I'm talking about modern history, not what Vikram beautifully illustrated. I'm talking about when we gained our independence, modern independence, 1947. Look at a few parameters and you realize, yes, we've been, by and large, we've been successful. We've had successes. For example, in 1947, our life expectancy was 32 years. 32 years. Today it is 71 years. In 1947, our literacy rate was 12%. Today it's upward of 86%. Our poverty rate in 1947 was 71%. Today it is 4.5%. And the most troubling was that our infant mortality rate in 1947, when we gained independence, was 160. That means out of every 1,000 babies born, 160 did not live to see 1 year. Today it is 24. So we've had success. And if you were to scrunch up the timeline a little bit further, not talk about 75 years, but 10 years, then we've had stunning success. To give you a few parameters, for example, in 2014, the percentage of Indian population that was multidimensionally poor was 29%. Today it is 11% in 10 years, from 29% to 11%. In 2014, our GDP per capita was $1,500 US. Today it is $2,500 US. In 2014, our forex reserves, foreign exchange reserves, were $300 billion. Today it is, this already crossed $700 billion, so it's more than doubled. It's possibly reached 710 or so. So many other parameters. For example, in 2014, we had 74 airports. Today we have 148. There were 5 cities that had metros in 2014. Today there are 20. In the last 10 years, we've built half the length of highways that we have built in the last 60 years before that. It's absolutely spectacular. In 2014, we had 21,000 kilometers of railway lines electrified. Today it is 63,000 kilometers. In 2014, we had, for example, to give you another relevant example to this audience, assets under management of mutual funds was 9 lakh crores. Today it's 63 lakh crores. So you're just managing 7-8 times more wealth than you were managing 10 years ago. So many other examples. Our electronics exports in 2014 were $7 billion. Today it is upwards of $23 billion. And the most satisfying one for the younger in the audience, although all of you are very young, but the even younger in the audience, was that in 2014 we had 3,000 startups. Today we have 118,000 startups. So yes, in the last 10 years, we've had stunning success. And if you were to scrunch that timeline even further, not 75 years, not 10 years, but 1 year, then our success has been spectacular. For example, our monthly GST collections have been the highest ever, 2.1 lakh crores, I think, in June. Our vehicle sales the last 1 year have been the highest ever, 4.2 million units. Our PMI manufacturing index that measures the manufacturing has been the highest ever at 59.1. The number of jobs we've created have been the highest ever at 47 million. So many others. If you look at the inflation, it's been a 5-year low of 3.5%. Central government to debt ratio has been the lowest in 5 years to 53%. Our income tax returns have been the highest ever at 63 million. Our inequality has been a 5-year low, Gini coefficient of 0.4. And our Sensex has been the highest ever at 83,000. So it's been from relative success to stunning success to spectacular success. So yes, many of you would say, yeah, what's this guy talking about with a mic in his hand and 30 seconds to boot? We've been a spectacular success story. Stop it. The glass is brimming. It's not half full or half empty. You know, enough of this pessimistic talk. But then I would say, if that was the case, then why is it that still in India, we have 300 million Indians living on 60 rupees a day? Why is it that today we have 150 million children out of school? Why is it that 34% of all Indian children below 5 are severely stunted and chronically malnourished? Why is it that 20% of all Indian children poor children have never been vaccinated? Why is it that 8 million children are committed to child labor? Why is it that 18 million Indians are still in bonded labor? Why is it that, of course, I've already mentioned 5 crore cases are still pending in our courts? Why is it that 70% of India is still without internet connectivity? Why is it that only 2% of adult Indians pay tax, whereas in UK it is 66%? Why is it that we are ranked 111 out of 125 in the World Hunger Index? And why is it that we are ranked 136th in our GDP per capita, below even Sri Lanka and until a few weeks ago, Bangladesh? So clearly, all is not rosy. All is not well. Yes, we've had bursts of spectacular, stunning successes, but these are also realities. And the next 45 minutes, I want to delve into this. Is it an India of contrasts? Will it always remain an India of contrast where you'll have spectacular data and balancing that out, unfortunately, data that you would want to shy away from or not look at it or ignore it, to always project our successes and hide our failures? No, we don't want to do that, because we want to usher in a new age. Amrit Kal will only come where both of them are discussed, where not one is hidden. And I put it to you that we've been at this position many times, just about to take off. But every time we've about to take off, the pilot has informed that, ladies and gentlemen, there's been some snag. You taxi around the runway and then park in a hangar somewhere. We've had these inflection points before. And India today truly stands at an inflection point. I gave you the data. We are about to take off. But I don't want us to, yet again, that's the operative phrase, yet again taxi around the runway and then park ourselves for the next 20, 30 years. I don't want to do that. We want to celebrate 2047 with India as a glorious land, a developed country. And I believe that what that requires is for us to move from the, as I say, treadmill to travelator. You see, treadmill is all very good. It may make you healthy. But as far as displacement goes, it's zero. You're all huffing and puffing, and if you were to not show what the treadmill actually looks like, you would just see a person walking, and you would say, well, yes, he's walking towards somewhere, but of course he's walking towards nowhere. We want to move from the treadmill to travelator. And I want to tell you the reason why we haven't yet done so. Because if we don't realize that, I'm afraid we're going to be stuck on the treadmill, huffing and puffing all our way through until 2047. And I believe the reason why we've not done this is because we, as a state and as a people, are confused about what our role should be. So I want to discuss about what our role should be as a state and what our role should be as a people. And I think we leave it at the end for us to ponder over whether we're fulfilling this role or whether we're confused about this role. But before that, I want to take a show of hands. I want to ask, what, in your opinion, is one act or a policy that has helped our economy the most since 1947? Just one act. Show of hands. Anyone, please? Just one Indian policy that has helped our economy. Yes, sir. Okay, that's a bit too complicated. I think it's Rahul Gandhi की आत्मा घुस गई है आप में. मुझे ये सुनने में अच्छा लगा, समझ में नहीं आया, but sure. Anyone else, please? Yes. Right, you've obviously heard my previous talk before, so you disqualify. Anybody else? One policy. Sorry? Liberalization, absolutely. Brilliant answer, yes. Anything else? Make in India, yes. Liberalization, make in India. Digital India, absolutely. Anything else? GST, yes. Somebody who likes tax. Surprise, surprise. Let me ring up Nirmala Sitharaman and say there's one guy who wants to be taxed more. Green revolution, sir, excellent answer, yes. Anything else? Liberalization, GST, digital. Do you realize one thing? That most, if not all, the answers that you've given are all correct answers, but they're all connected to economy and finance. What if I were to tell you that the single greatest act since independence India that has helped our economy grow is the midday meal scheme? One scheme, every day because of which 130 million children, Indian children, go to school. They get education and they get fed. And most of their parents, they send children to school primarily so that they can eat, and they get educated in return as well as a bonus. And it is mandated by the Supreme Court now that every child who gets a midday meal scheme by virtue of a law has to have a minimum of 430 kilocalorie strong meal. And this person who thought of this, who implemented this first, K. Kamraj, never even went to school. So next time you think of a leader or politician who you believe is going to help the nation most, must be educated, must be an undergraduate, must be a graduate, a PhD, a doctor, a medical doctor, this, that. Just imagine one person who helped this country grow the most never even went to school. And this, I believe, ladies and gentlemen, is the role of the state. The role of the state is just this: to deliver a healthier, wealthier, wiser, more adaptable, more flexible workforce. That is it. That's it. The role of the state is not to use that workforce, because we know the world over, especially through socialism and communist regime, any state that has tried to use the workforce, the entire state has collapsed. It's just impossible. States are not good at using this workforce. But if the state can create this workforce and deliver this workforce to you, the wealth creators, that is when nations grow. And that is where we remove this cloud, almost an envelope of confusion that surrounds this state. So I talked about healthier, wealthier, wiser, more flexible, more adaptable workforce. And I put it to you that our state is so confused that our actions since 1947 have been the exact opposite. And I'll prove it to you giving examples. Let me start from the last that I talked about and then move on to the first that I talked about, which is healthier. So let's talk about how to create, or what happens. Has the state created a more flexible, more adaptable workforce? Now, 44% of Indian workforce of 600 million, about 585 million, it's grown to about 600 million strong workforce. 44% is involved in agriculture. 44% is involved in a sector that contributes only 14% to our GDP. That's it. 250 million usable Indian workforce is involved in a sector that contributes so little to the GDP. From production to purchase, everything is absolutely archaic. And yet, no one has tried to do anything about it. Why is this? Where is the state, the role of the state out here? And I will exemplify it by dividing this sector further into what or how is produced in this sector, why is it produced, and then what happens to what is produced. So let us begin by the first objective, which is how are things produced in this sector that employs 44% of our labor force. Incidentally, in the West, only 2% of the labor force is involved in agriculture. Even in middle-income economies or developing countries that are still developing, it's not more than 3%, 3.5%. In India, it's 44%. This right here is a calamity that is not about to happen. It has already happened. It has been happening for the last 50, 60 years. 35% of our agriculture is dependent on rain. 35%. 70 million hectares of agricultural land, 70 million hectares, has been destroyed in the last 6 years because of drought, famine, or flood. That's almost 40% of how you would produce anything. From the beginning itself has been destroyed. That's the beginning of this sector itself. What are you going to do about it? 81% of all farmers and cropland is not insured. Do you know of any other sector that exhibits this? Further, 110,000 farmers in the last 10 years have committed suicide because of this. More than 1 lakh. Do you know of any other sector where 1 lakh of workers in the last 10 years have committed suicide? This is the calamitous situation. And what are we doing about it? Absolutely nothing. Let's come to the next part, which is 70 million tons of what is produced goes waste. Every year, 70 million tons. Why does that happen? Because it's not just lack of vision. It is, for lack of vision, at least you will have eyes. Out here, the state is blind to not just future, to what has happened, what it has already committed. I'll give you one example. What is produced? India is the world's second largest producer of sugarcane. Every year we produce 500 billion kilograms of sugarcane. The amount of water that is required is enormous to grow 500 billion kilograms, because sugarcane, while it involves only 9% of arable land, it requires more than 71.5% of irrigable water. It's enormously water-consuming crop. The amount of water that is required to grow 500 billion kilograms of sugarcane is 1 quadrillion liters. I didn't even know what quadrillion means. I had to check. I thought things finish after trillion. So did you, I assume. So to give you a perspective of what 1 quadrillion liters is the amount of water that is present in 10 Ganga Sagar dams. That's the amount of water that is required to grow sugarcane. And sugar prices, they have halved in the last 6 years. We simply cannot afford to be world's second largest producer of sugarcane. But we continue to. Every year, the politicians promise more and more MSP equivalent to the farmers as far as sugarcane is concerned. They're proud of it. They incorporate it in their manifesto. Every year we've increased the MSP equivalent of sugarcane. Proudly so. Until one politician from this state decided enough is enough. We cannot afford this. We will go not only bankrupt, we will also completely get rid of our water if we keep on doing this. That person was the Chief Minister of Maharashtra. He was Mr. Fadnavis. So he brought out a law that said, from now on, any farmer wants to grow sugarcane, he has to take government permission before he does it. And you know very cleverly what entailing getting a government permission is. You much rather not do it just to not get their permission. Within 3 months, he had to rescind on that order. I won't name the politician who forced him to, but he has gotten India's second highest award. Because obviously sugarcane was required, the byproduct of sugarcane was required for the industries that he controlled. This is how the state is acting, without a care for the future, what holds for us. Did you know that 78% of all river water during monsoon flows into the oceans? 78%. And here we are growing a water-intensive crop. 3,100 billion cubic feet of Narmada water, I beg your pardon, Godavari water, goes into the ocean every monsoon, every year. 3,000 billion cubic feet. And the water requirement for the entire state of Tamil Nadu is 1,800 billion cubic feet. Every year this happens. Politicians are proud to inaugurate water trains. You remember a few years ago in Latur, there was intense drought, and politicians were cutting ribbons to start water trains going to Latur. They were overjoyed. They were coming in all those images in front of newspapers that we've inaugurated water trains. What they should have inaugurated were river linking projects. The Supreme Court has mandated we need to have 30 river linking projects. Not even one has proved successful, has come to success. Not just one. We need to have our flood-prone areas, water taken from there to the drought-prone areas. But we're not worried about it. In the last 40 years, our water availability per capita has slashed by half. In 1984, it used to be 3,000 cubic meter. Today, it is 1,400 cubic meters. We don't even realize this. According to United Nations, the water availability per capita required for civilized living is 1,700 cubic meters. So we are officially uncivilized right now. This is the situation. What has the state done about it? Absolutely nothing. And it's not just that we are producing the wrong kind of stuff. It is the manner in which we are producing it. We all know the extent to which the soil has been poisoned. Let's not talk about the water. There are cancer trains, as you know, that run from Punjab to Rajasthan almost daily. India is the world's second largest consumer of chemical pesticide. Every year we consume 60,000 tons of chemical pesticide. Every year 30,000 Indians die of pesticide poisoning. Our export, food export refusal rate, as far as America is concerned, is 7 times more than China. Countries are not buying our food. Forget about countries. Congress ruled Karnataka yesterday refused to buy Punjab-grown rice. Punjab is an ally. The state governing Punjab is an ally of Congress. Karnataka refused Punjab rice. This is the situation right now. 70 million tons of our produce goes waste every year. 30% of fruits and vegetables go waste. 30% every year. This is happening in this sector. What is the country, what is the state doing about it? Well, what are the means of production? Maybe those are more advanced. India produces 4,000 kilograms per hectare of rice. It is one of the lowest in terms of the amount of rice produced per hectare. Even if you look at middle-income economies like Vietnam or something, traditional rice producers, Philippines, ours is 50% the maximum capacity to which per hectare you can produce rice. 50% after 70 years of growing rice. 50%. For maize it is 25%. This is the situation right now. And it's not just a question of what is produced, not a question of how it is produced. It's a question of what do we do after it is produced. Have we thought about it? India produces 320 million tons of food grains every year. We can only store 145 million tons in godowns. Half of it, we don't have capacity or places to store what we are producing. What is going on in this sector? What is the state doing? Well, one person thought of doing something, and that person was Narendra Modi. And 4 years ago, he brought in these 3 farm reforms or farm laws, and they would have transformed this entire sector. If ever there was any reform needed, I've already given you the troubling, terrifying data in this sector. These 3 reforms would have managed to change it. Within 10 years or 15 years, we would have catapulted to a middle-income economy. What were these 3 farm reforms? The first was, farmers will be given a choice. You would respect farmers, not through an endowment of a Manoj Kumar song, but as a business person, as what all of you are. You would respect a farmer as a businessman, give him a choice. You produce something, here is a choice, you can sell it wherever you want. You can sell it in a government mandi, APMC, or you can sell it in a private marketplace. The cornerstone of progress is delivering choice. That's it, at the end of it. Any business, anything you do, if you have a choice, you will always succeed. First one was, the farmers will be given a choice to sell their produce where they want to sell it. Just imagine, if you're a businessman, and the government says, you've come up with a wonderful product, which would be a money spinner, but you cannot sell it anywhere except on our government website that works only 1 hour in 24 hours. You would be incensed. You would take the government to court. Why should farmers be any different? But when it comes to farmers, we believe, no. We, the state, has a God-given right to dictate where their produce should be sold. We don't treat farmers as businessmen. We treat them as something, an entity that is doing a job that is so sacrosanct that even if it is loss-making, let's not care about them, let's not care about the sector. Let's just have it as a Manoj Kumar, mere desh ki dharti sona ugle. The first reform was that. The second was to remove the emergency provisions of the Essential Commodities Act, because this is what bureaucratic speak would do. Almost overnight, they would change the meaning of storage to something that you are hoarding something. So from storage to hoarding would mean that you would be liable to arrest. And that is why no businessman worth his or her salt was willing to make state-of-the-art 24-hour running godowns that could store agricultural produce that was otherwise perishable. Because the government would decide what is storage and what is hoarding. Overnight, something that you've stored would be declared as hoarding and you would be arrested. And this was used to happen. And you've seen all those horrible images of farmers dumping their produce onto streets. Even milk was dumped. And you've seen onions being dumped, tomatoes being dumped, and that was because they could not store. It was perishable amount that would perish within days. The second was that it would allow people to actually make businessmen to enter into this area and to make state-of-the-art godowns that would run all year round so that you could store perishable amount of agricultural produce. And the third was contract farming, that any businessman would approach a farmer to say, well, this is what I'll pay you for you to produce this for me, which is what the essence or core of business is. What do investors do? You invest in something. Why do you want to invest in something that would give you poor returns? Why would you want to buy a product that is absolutely useless? So here a businessman would go to a farmer and say, look, stop producing rice that is ultimately wasted and only rats eat. Make coffee instead, produce coffee. Contract farming. So these were the 3 farm reforms that would have transformed this sector, crying out for reforms that would have changed the lives of 250 million Indians. No reform, even liberalization, would have been as effective as these reforms. And what happened? Almost overnight, the whole nation came to an entire standstill. Not just overnight, would still have been palatable if it was just for a night or a fortnight, but it went on for an entire year. The capital of India was blockaded. 5 highways were blocked. Every day, the nation suffered an economic financial loss of 3,500 crores every single day for a year because the opposition parties protested. But the irony was that each of these 3 reforms, almost verbatim, were in the manifesto of each of these political parties, starting with Congress. In fact, the Congress manifesto promised something even more reforming than Narendra Modi did. The Congress said we would do away with the government mandis. Modi at least provided a choice that you can sell it in government mandis and you can sell it in private marketplace. Congress said, no, this is archaic, remove it. But the moment Modi brought these reforms, all hell broke loose. The 3 very reforms turned into black laws. The nation came to a standstill. And of course, it was a calamitous day, I think 19 November, I still remember 2021, when Modi said that we are taking back these 3 farm laws. That was a dark day for this country. But again, it's not just that the Kisan unions or the political parties or the then agricultural minister Sharad Pawar during the Congress rule wanted these reforms. It's not that Modi went back on these 3 farm reforms. It is that because you expect politicians to be hypocritical. They have to win elections. So they're always thinking about, which vote bank to placate and who to appease. The saddest part was the conduct of the Supreme Court. And I've said this before, and I escaped conviction because of contempt of court petition. JSI helped me so I can be even more vigorous in my blasting the judges. The saddest day was when the Supreme Court said that all we see are the people who are protesting against the farm laws. Where are the people who are for the farm laws? This is what the Supreme Court said. So in a sense, the Supreme Court was asking those 250 million farmers to drop whatever they're doing in far-flung Telangana, Tamil Nadu, interiors of Kerala, in Odisha, take a bullock cart or a train or a bus or a ride and come to Supreme Court, stand outside Supreme Court and say, my lords, we are for the farm reforms. Is that how a democracy is supposed to work? No. This is how anarchy works. This is how dictatorial regimes work. But sadly, there was no cost to pay. There was no head that rolled. And this is the reason why we are where we are. And going forward, if we do not change this mentality, this confusion that surrounds us as to what our role is, I'm afraid all the successes that we've had would pale in comparison to the failures that promise to lie ahead. The second example that I'd like to take is of another sector where the state has a terribly confused role, and that is tourism. We've had some successes, but did you know that one small city, Paris, one city in the world, attracts 25 million foreign tourists a year? India, population of 1400 million, I beg your pardon. One city, Paris, 25 million. India, 11 million foreign tourists. Only 30 million Indians are employed directly in the tourism sector. It should be 5 times that. Tourism contributes only 2.5% to our GDP. It should be 5 times that, minimum. We have an 8,000-year-old culture. We have hundreds of languages, hundreds of dialects, such amazing places, from snowy peak mountains to beaches, to deserts, to greenery, to Sundarbans. We have 42 World Heritage Sites, and yet we attract only 11 million foreign tourists. Greece has half the number of World Heritage Sites that we do, and yet it attracts 3 times more foreign tourists than we do. Small country like Greece. The Sun Temple of Peru attracts 1.5 million foreign tourists a year. The Sun Temple of Konark attracts 9,000 foreign tourists a year. 1.5 million, 9,000. What are we doing about it? We have Bodh Gaya. That should be the Vatican of the East. Bodh Gaya is where Lord Buddha attained enlightenment. There are 535 million Buddhists around the world. South Korea, Japan, China, they would be falling over each other to develop it. And yet the annual budgetary allocation of the municipal corporation of Bodh Gaya is less than the production budget of the failed movie Adipurush, 500 crores. The Bodhi tree under which Lord Buddha attained enlightenment is visited by only 0.25 million foreign tourists. Number of Buddhists around the world, 535 million. People, Buddhists or tourists who visit the Bodh tree, 0.25 million. 535 million, 0.25 million. What's the state doing? UAE, a small country like UAE, has more hotel rooms than India. China has 100 times more hotel rooms than India does. 0.2 million to 20 million. 100 times more. This is us, an 8,000-year-old ancient civilization. Are we showcasing ourselves enough? I leave it to you to decide. This is the situation right now. You eat in a restaurant, it attracts 5% GST. But you eat in a restaurant that has also hotel rooms attached to it, you immediately pay 18% GST. People are crying out. Where is our business sense? The finance minister realizes this. She says, no return on investment, but why would there be? Because we ourselves believe only dams and universities are the temples of modern India. Why not hotels? How else would we showcase? How else would people come in if they don't have a place to stay? If we charge them and fleece them? In 2015, Narendra Modi decided enough is enough. We need more skilling. We need more skilled people. So he started the Skill India mission. The aim was by 2022, we would have 400 million Indians skilled. 2022 came and went. How many Indians were skilled? 14 million. The aim was 400 million. We skilled 14 million. We've had an apprenticeship act since 1960, since the time of Nehru. Because people realize, in order for you to skill, you need to have apprenticeship. It's essential. You need a mentor. We have 0.5 million people who are apprentices in a 600 million strong labor force. There is a 60% gap in the skill and demand as far as tourist jobs are concerned. What is the state doing? I'll tell you what the state is doing. The state itself is running 495 hotels. Almost all of them are loss-making. The only time they make revenue is after elections, when the politicians have to be ferried from one state to the other for the flock to be kept. This is the situation in a territory. It's the lowest hanging fruit. Tourism is the lowest hanging fruit, but we're not plucking it. We are watching it rot. This is about the flexibility. This is about inducing adaptiveness to our workforce. The lowest hanging fruit, agriculture, tourism. Let's come now to the second aspect, which is about wiser workforce. Now, of course, at the cornerstone of making a very productive workforce that would be used by you wealth creators is to have a more educated, wiser workforce. How are we faring there? Perhaps we're faring better than what we're faring in the first sector. 1.1 million teachers are fewer than what we require them to be. There is a 19% vacancy in the number of school teachers that we need, 19%. We have 1.1 million fewer teachers than we do. In some states, the pupil to teacher ratio is 60:1 like Bihar, 60:1. 8% of all Indian schools are single teacher schools, 8%. 40% of all rural schools do not have a functional toilet. And as a result, mothers are wary of sending their pupils to school. There is a 20% teacher absenteeism rate in Indian schools. 45% of Indian high school students cannot do a simple subtraction, addition, sum. 45%. 51% of all Indian high school students cannot string a sentence in English. There is a 20% school dropout rate after high school. This is the situation of our schools. Is the situation of our universities better? We're looking at a wiser workforce. Maybe it's better. All those 100 million school children who pass out of school, how do the universities fare? There is a 25% gross enrollment ratio, that's it, of universities. We have only 1,100 functional universities. 53% of all Indian graduates are unemployable. It's not that they're unemployed. They cannot be employed. They don't have the requisite skills. 80% of all Indian engineering graduates are unemployable. Unemployable, not unemployed, unemployable. The government shut down 800 engineering colleges because they were so substandard. Even the government found that, yes, we have to shut it down. That is the situation. And 25% of our population, I beg your pardon, half of Indian population is 25 years or younger. This is the situation right now of our education sector. When half of our population is 25 or younger, and 90% of them, of youth, have been exposed to a smartphone. In year 2000, 33% of all unemployed Indians were graduates. Today it is 66%, doubled. 66% of all unemployed Indians are graduates. This is the situation of our sector. What are we doing? Our spending on education is one of the lowest. The state doesn't even realize. The state is so confused about it. It's only worried about people who graduate out, the 20% who are engineers who are employable. The rest 80%, the state doesn't care. The state is not looking at 2047, how to create a wiser workforce. Well, what about wealthier workforce? Maybe the state can create a wealthier workforce. Now, one of the things that really endeared me to Narendra Modi in 2013 was a phrase that he said that I said, here at last a leader is frank enough to say what needs to be said. He said, a government has no business in running a business. I said, finally, there is one leader who has confronted the reality. The governments cannot run a business. They have no business to run it. But unfortunately, in the last 10 years, all what Modi government has done is to be in the business of running businesses. We have 1,830 public sector units. 400 of them are non-functional. Non-functional. You realize what that means? They're not functioning. And yet they are being propped up. Yet tens of thousands of taxpayers' money is going in propping them up. Every year, 21% of our annual allocated budget of 45 lakh crores, that's almost 9 lakh crores, goes in propping up these public sector units. 9 lakh crores every year of our money. Two businesses that Narendra Modi said the government has no business to run. We have BSNL, we have MSNL, we have state running hotels. We have state running telephony companies that every 3 or 4 years require a capital infusion of 3 lakh crores, 2 lakh crores of our money. Who is asking questions? Is the state asking these questions? No. The state is acquiring more and more. Every time you do disinvestment, you always disinvest from one public sector unit and you give that disinvestment to another public sector unit. Every time LIC thinks, यार हमेशा मेरे को क्यों तोड़ते हो यार? मुझसे क्या तो ये खरीद लो, कोल इंडिया खरीद लो, भाई मैं क्यों फंस जाता हूँ बार बार? Every time you simply shift junk silver from one family pocket to the other, without realizing you're not doing anything. There's been, other than Air India, zero privatization in the last 10 years. Zero privatization. Where is the courage? Where is the fearlessness to accost this reality that it cannot go on like this? The worst culprits are the banks, PSU banks. You have, in the last 10 years, 37,000 fraudulent acts have been committed on PSU banks to the tune of 87,000 crores. You might not remember Indian scientists who was G.N. Ramachandran, who was Upendra Brahmachari, but you remember who was Harshad Mehta, who was Ketan Parekh, who was Vijay Mallya, who was Nirav Modi. These are the people who've become childhood names to remember because of national banks, because of the massive corruption that has entailed. The moment Indira Gandhi nationalized those banks, going against overturning the Supreme Court judgment, they are cash cows for politicians to dictate where our taxpayers' money should go, who should receive that money, which politician, which businessman, which person, which crook, which crony needs this money, this loan. In the last 10 years, the public sector banks have ratcheted up an NPA of more than 10 lakh crores. The government has written off most of it. Not waived off, written off. But here is the thing. You might have papered over your accounting books so it looks good, but only 10% of it has been recovered. Only 1.6 lakh crores, the other 9 lakh crores has just disappeared, possibly would never come back. But are we worried about this? This is our money. And if we believe the situation is terrible as far as public sector units is concerned, in the way government runs businesses, maybe things are better, government allows us to run our own businesses. Well, think again. An MSC, average size MSC, MSME that employs 150 people has to spend 18 lakhs a year in its filings for filing compliances. We have 69,000 compliances to be filed. 69,000. This is the ease of business. It's just scary. There are 6,600 filings that have to be done every year by businesses. And I calculated, it's almost filing every hour of working day. So by the time this lecture finished, some of you businessmen would have missed your filing and would be liable to be jailed. We still use Factories Act of 1948, where if in a factory you don't have a spittoon, you can be arrested. I hope some of you in your factories, please have a spittoon in your factory. That is an absolute requirement. The top 5 state contributors to our GDP, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Punjab, have 1,000 such rules for businesses that carry a clause of imprisonment. Talk about civil, this is criminal. You're criminally liable. This is the situation as far as private enterprise is concerned. Is this the way we will confront 2047 and reach towards it? Is this our Amrit Kal, where we talk about prosperity? Finally, I come to a healthier workforce. Having dealt with more adaptive workforce, more wiser workforce, more wealthier workforce, finally we come to healthier workforce. And here I do admit that we've made reasonably good progress. I talked about the infant mortality rate of 1947 and what it is now. In some states, it is touching the infant mortality rate values of European countries. For example, Kerala has an IMR of 7 or 8, which is remarkable. All over India, the figure is 24, which again is a marked improvement from what it was 70, 80 years ago. And we've made tremendous progress, not just to mention our health-wise. For example, we have Ayushman Health Card now, so we have 360 million Indians who are insured. We have given treatment out of that to more than 60 million Indians have benefited through it. So yes, but that is present. Are we talking about the future? How prepared are we about the future as far as healthier workforce is concerned? Because health is wealth. If we do not have a healthier workforce, how are we going to confront the future? They might be wealthier, but if they're not healthy, they will not be able to work. Now, in 2020, ICMR, Indian Council for Medical Research, commissioned a wonderful work. They wanted to find out the kind of diseases that afflict Indians now to what the kind of diseases afflicted us pre-liberalization, 1990. And the two pie charts were very revealing. What it showed was before economic liberalization in 1990, 70% of the diseases that afflicted Indians were communicable diseases, like tuberculosis, malaria, viral diseases, cholera, because we were poor then. We were living in stifling, small sanitary conditions were not very good. We had contaminated water. We had small houses. Tuberculosis prospered there. Only 30% of the diseases that afflicted Indians were non-communicable, so-called diabetes, cancer, heart ailments, asthma. Then came economic liberalization. And what's the pie chart showing now? It's completely flipped. Now only 30% of the diseases that afflict Indians are communicable diseases like tuberculosis and malaria and others. And I suspect by the time 2047 comes, it'll be dwindling down to almost 1 or 2%. If we haven't found the cure for them already, we would, with economic prosperity, the communicable diseases would go down. 70% right now of the disease that afflict us are non-communicable. What are we doing about it? With increased prosperity has come this tsunami of diseases that we simply not prepared to even admit. In 1990, 0.5 million Indians suffered from cancer. Today it is 4 times that, 2 million cancer cases. 80% of all Indian cancer cases are below 50 years. India is the hub of heart ailments. India is now the hub of asthma patients. And talking of diabetes, there was a Lancet study that was created. But before that, I want to tell you, with increasing wealth and prosperity that economic liberalization brought us, 250 million Indians are right now clinically obese. 320 million Indians have high blood pressure. We don't even realize this. 150 million Indians are pre-diabetic. 100 million Indians are confirmed diabetic. Did we know this? What are these figures? They are not being plucked out of thin air. This is our reality. We are more prosperous, but we are so much more less healthier than we were. And we don't even realize this is not a tsunami that's coming our way. It has struck us. Where is the cure for diabetes? Do we have a super drug for diabetes? Do we have a monoclonal antibody? All those 100 million, 200 million Indians are going to knock at the door of the state saying, you didn't educate us about this. We were unaware and now we are suffering. What have you done about it? What will the state do? Where are the solutions? And here is where I'd like a show of hands. How many of you know who Lakshmi Kutti is? Lakshmi Kutti. One hand has gone up. Okay, one. And I'll admit 6 months ago, I would have been in the same boat as you. Even I didn't know who Lakshmi Kutti was. Let me tell you. Lakshmi Kutti is a frail 85-year-old woman who spent all her life in the Western Ghat forest. She came into prominence 3 or 4 years ago when she got the Padma Shri. Lakshmi Kutti was awarded the Padma Shri because all her life she's collected this cornucopia of 500 medicinal plants that she's been using the extracts of to cure tribals of their diseases. Lakshmi Kutti, she came to Rakshati Bhavan, and within a week she left. She said, I'm not used to all this opulence. My life has been spent in forests, and that is where I belong. We should have 100 Lakshmi Kutti natural products institutes to find out the active ingredient from those plants. Who knows, one amongst them could be a multi-billion-dollar spilling drug against diabetes, against cancer, against heart ailments, against asthma. Have we dared to find out what those active ingredients are, that active molecule in Lakshmi Kutti's plants? And if you believe that this is a figment of my imagination, that something could spin out of it, I want another show of hands. How many of you know who 2UU is? 2UU. Again, the same gentleman, I suspect he is from the pharma industry. Well done. 2UU is just like Lakshmi Kutti, 85-year-old, except that she's Chinese. And just like Lakshmi Kutti, 2UU spent all her life in the forests of China. Just like Lakshmi Kutti, she was collecting these medicinal plants to cure the Chinese, of the forest-dwelling Chinese or the rural Chinese. But unlike Lakshmi Kutti, 2UU isolated the active ingredient from one of her medicinal plants. And that active ingredient was artemisinin, the only viable drug right now against malaria. And 2UU got the Nobel Prize for it. And you know what's going to happen? Maybe some lab from Nordic country or Western Europe would descend down the Western Ghats and talk to Lakshmi Kutti and say, can we have your cornucopia of medicinal plants? And Lakshmi Kutti, being Lakshmi Kutti, she would say, of course, being so kind and affable, take it, take everything. And the Swedes would take those plants back to Sweden. They would isolate the active ingredient. It would be a cure for diabetes or cure for heart ailments. They would get a Nobel Prize for it. And at the Nobel Prize ceremony, they would thank Lakshmi Kutti. And we would be so enamored with it, we would give her Bharat Ratna. That's the way we think. This is what the state's role has been. But you know, if the state's role has been confused about creating a more adaptable workforce, creating a wealthier workforce, a wiser workforce, and finally a healthier workforce, do we escape all blame, the citizens? And here I'd like to say something, that I am all for a welfare state. India has to be a welfare state. If India is not a welfare state, we would wipe out tens, possibly hundreds of millions of people. All of us have to grow together. It doesn't make any sense to have islands of prosperity in India and you have misery all around. It doesn't make any sense. We would not be a nation then. We would just be tribes who are successful amidst an ocean of misery. No. We have to be a welfare state, and India has been a welfare state. If in the last 10 years, Narendra Modi had not built 110 million toilets, did you know that every new toilet that was built saved that family, that household, 50,000 rupees in health costs? And it just came out a month ago that 600,000 infants have been saved from virtual absolute death because of those toilets. So that is important. Welfare schemes have been crucial in saving lives, in instilling a sense of well-being, in actually improving the quality of life of fellow Indians, and that's important. If Narendra Modi had not developed, for example, the Ujjwala scheme, given 100 million gas connections, did you know every year 150,000 Indians, their lives are saved directly because of Ujjwala scheme? Because household pollution is the biggest infant mortality factor. It's not some disease, it's household pollution. We didn't even realize this. Did you know that Narendra Modi has provided 120 million tap water connections and the under 5 diarrheal deaths have been slashed by half? So welfare schemes help in saving lives, in making India more prosperous. And it's not just the health-based Ayushman Bharat I talked about, 360 million Indians having health cards now, health insurance, and more than the population of United Kingdom having been treated through them. 68 million Indians have been treated through them. It's the financial inclusion as well. You have 600 million Jan Dhan accounts, you can have direct transfer. You have Mudra loans, 430 million Indians have been given Mudra loans. All those things have contributed. Welfareism is important for our country. 1 billion Indians were vaccinated twice over within a year. Modi accomplished that. I would say it is the single greatest achievement of independent India, to have vaccinated 1 billion Indian twice over within a year. Millions would have lost their lives had we not done it. Welfareism is crucial. But what we fail to realize is that welfareism is only possible in a capitalist state. You need to generate money in order to then spend it on welfare. Socialist state is not possible to deliver socialism, as we call it, or welfareism. But we as a public have to realize what the politicians are doing as far as welfareism is concerned. Is it welfareism or is it freebism? This is where, leave the state, our role is confused. We have stopped asking questions. Where do we draw that line? What is freebie and what is welfareism? Do we understand that? And I dare say we don't, because we don't bother about it. And unless we draw that line, unless we demarcate what is welfareism, what is crucial for the country, and what is freebism, I'm afraid we are staring down a bottomless abyss out of which there is absolutely no escape, come 2047 or not. And a politician will never draw that line, because for a politician, every freebism is welfareism. Why would he want to draw that line? And you've seen that example most recently in Maharashtra. You've seen BJP castigating Rahul Gandhi for the Khatakat scheme, where he says, I will give 1 lakh rupees to every woman. And BJP was mocking it. In Maharashtra, the BJP not just promised it, the BJP has delivered. The BJP Shiv Sena Sarkar has delivered 1,500 rupees per month to every eligible Maharashtrian woman aged 21 to 60. It is costing 53,000 crores every year to the Maharashtra exchequer. And now the upcoming poll promise of Mr. Shinde is, we are going to double it to 3,000 rupees per month. You know, the debt of Maharashtra is 8 lakh crores. Are we bothered about it? Has anybody asked these questions? Where is that money going to come from? Or do we think there is a tree from which we can pluck it? It's a money plant. It's not a plant anymore. We can actually pluck like America does. America has a debt right now of $40 trillion. They don't care because they can print money. But there is no free lunch for us. Do we want to go back to a situation that it was in 1990, where we had 0.6 billion foreign exchange reserves? We had to mortgage 70 tons of our gold. We loaded it onto ships for it to land in Bank of England. That was 1990. And you know, all of us are oblivious of the fact, all of us applauded the fact that we have 350 startups 10 years ago. Today we have 118,000 startups. Who do you think is going to pay for this debt? We can't print monies, we can't print dollars. All of you guys, wealth creators, the startup creators are going to pay more taxes for this. This is what's going to happen. The states have a cumulative debt of 75 lakh crores right now. India cannot afford to print money. So what is this freebie? What is this welfare? I myself have tried to draw that line, and every one of us should. Let me give you a few examples of the blatant freebism. The first and most obvious one is that the state, every political party, whenever it gains power, it gives free pilgrimages to senior citizens. You have Arvind Kejriwal in my state, Delhi, giving free pilgrimages for senior citizens to go to Dwarka. You have Samajwadi Party, Ajmer Sharif. Congress, you go to, South. You have Odisha. You have free pilgrimage to go to Jagannath Puri. BJP is not far behind. BJP promised in Nagaland, every person who voted for BJP will give free pilgrimage to Jerusalem. अयोध्या तो दूर की बात है, कह रहे हैं जेरूसलम चले जाएंगे आपको. क्यों भाई, ये हमारा पैसा है. What is the Indian state doing giving Hajj subsidies? What is the Indian state doing giving free salaries, monthly salaries to imams and maulvis? Is this the role of the state? Is this welfareism? No, this is blatant appeasement. Welfareism is something that is in national interest. Freebism is something that is against national interest. And these are the things that are against national interest. We have, for example, giving interest-free loans for anybody to set up a shop on Waqf land. Why is the state doing this? The second obvious freebism is government ads. BJP in the last 10 years, the central government used 8,000 crores in government ads. 8,000 crores of taxpayers' money in government ads. Arvind Kejriwal's Delhi government has spent 1,200 crores in the last 3 years alone. वो कह रहे हैं तुमने तो 10 साल में किया था, हम 3 साल में करके दिखाएंगे. This is Arvind Kejriwal government. Why? And what do these ads do other than do sycophantic odes of their fellow friends and ministers, wish them birthdays with full paper ads? And I talked about tourism. The ad money funding for tourism to be projected India as a tourism hub is 3 crore rupees. And here we are spending 8,000, 10,000 crores on government ads. 3 crores is only 5 ads, full newspaper ads. This is what we care about tourism. And we don't, as citizens, don't even bother to ask this question. Why are you using 10,000 crores of our money in wishing each other happy birthday and saying, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका ये party वो हो गई, ये जीत गए, वो जीत गए? Why? That's our money. Have we thought about this? And every time we open a newspaper, we don't realize that it is being used to bribe the media. You've seen this media nowadays having this avant-garde media, we running this campaign, this moral and ethical campaign. Have you ever seen any media house run a campaign against government ads? Never. Because they earn money through it. They fly over each other, fall over each other to get that government money. They literally fight for it. And the government uses it to bribe. Are we running out of time? Maybe just 4 minutes or 4 minutes, 2-3 minutes, just add that. I'm at the end of this. That's another freebie. The third freebie you can talk about is in 2005, celebrated economists, confirmed economists, Manmohan Singh and Monteng Singh Ahluwalia said, India can no longer afford the pension scheme that it has, which was the old pension scheme. We need a new pension scheme because in 1980, we were using 2% of our revenue for pensions. Now we're using 20%. So they came up with the new pension scheme where you would have the employee also contribute 10% and the state contribute 14%. Whereas in the old pension scheme, you had 50% of the last drawable salary as your pension. That was not taxable itself. In 2022, another celebrated economist, Rahul Gandhi, said that if you vote us in power in Himachal, we will junk the new pension scheme that was brought by the Congress and revert to the old pension scheme. This is what he said. Himachal has 1.3 lakh employees, government employees, 1.6 lakh pensioners. Congress won. And Congress came to power and reverted to the old pension scheme. And as a result, even Monteng Singh Ahluwalia was forced to say that this is the biggest revelry of all. You will go bankrupt. Don't do this. The Reserve Bank of India said, please don't do this. You are spending 5 times more on pensions now than you were in NPS. And what is happening right now? The state is bankrupt. It has a debt of upwards of 95,000 crores, a small state like Himachal. The chief minister said we cannot afford to give salaries to MLAs. They've started toilet tax If you have an extra toilet, you would actually have to pay more tax. This is the situation. Do we even realize this? Have the citizens protested? No, they didn't. They in fact voted the government that wanted to revert to this freebie. And finally, I'll take a couple of minutes. I'm sorry, I've run out of time, 5 minutes more. But this is the mother of all freebies, and this is important. Because every political party, no political party has the courage to tackle this freebie. And this freebie is the MSP, or minimum support price. This is the termite that is going to eat this country hollow. And it concerns the sector that is already eating this country hollow, the agricultural sector. Now, admittedly, we perhaps needed MSP at some point of time in the 50s and in the 60s, when we could not produce enough, or we producing wheat that was not enough to feed us. So we were dependent upon the American third gate variety. You remember PL480 wheat or something like that. We were growing 80 million tons of food grain. Today we grow 320 million tons, 4 times as much. But MSP has remained the same. Every year, the governments placate the farmers more and more and more. They keep on increasing the MSPs without realizing that this is a Soviet-era relic. We don't need it. It's like a sarkari job for them. And you know, economic tells you, the moment you guarantee something for it, the farmers will produce only that. So farmers produce only wheat and rice. We do not have storage capacity to store that wheat and rice. Our storage capacity is only 145 million tons. We are producing 320 million tons. Our buffer limit, maximum buffer limit is 41 million tons of food grains. 2 years ago, we produced 60 million tons over and above that. Who was consuming it? Rats. FCI has a debt of 2.3 lakh crores. The government rode over it, said, don't worry about it. Doesn't matter if we can produce it or not, we are going to procure it. Rahul Gandhi wants to guarantee MSP for every crop. It's going to cost us 16 lakh crores every year. Who is bothered about it? And current Rahul Gandhi's advisor blamed MSP, Raghuram Rajan, for increased inflation. Because you keep on growing the crop that nobody wants. ICAIR has come up with an authoritative study that says faulty evaluation, MSP or otherwise, on agricultural produce has made the farmers lose 45 lakh crores in the last 15 years. 62% of the farmers surveyed, they said, we don't want MSP. Farmers don't want it. But farmers are being promised this. This is the calamitous freebie situation. And if you believe BJP is away from it, think again in the recently concluded Haryana election, while the BJP mocked Rahul Gandhi for promising MSP for every crop, the BJP promised exactly that. Every crop grown in Haryana was guaranteed an MSP. BJP won. Who voted for it? We voted for it, without realizing what is a freebie and what is welfare. Our food is being poisoned. We don't have enough storage capacity to store that amount of food. When COVID struck, we had to import food grain from Ukraine and Russia because our was 8 million tons was unedible. But as citizens, we are not concerned about it. It's something else that farmers will worry about it, governments will worry about it, or let them worry about it. But you know it concerns us in ways that you don't even realize it now. One of the biggest direct fallout of MSP has been because ever since it was guaranteed for rice, Punjab and Haryana have been growing preferentially that. And because it is water-intensive crop, they have completely soaked up all the groundwater there is. And alarmed, the government said, you can no longer use the groundwater. You have to wait for the monsoons. So the paddy season was delayed by a few months to coincide with the monsoons. And as a result, the harvesting season was also delayed. And now it coincides with the onset of winter. And just now it is happening right now. Today, as I speak, Delhi and NCR is enveloped in a smog because parali burning. The farmers, in order to cycle for the next crop, they simply burn the paddy fields. Every year, 35 million tons of rice stubble is burnt. 35 million tons, I apologize, just a couple of minutes I'll take, because this is very important. Every year, India burns 100 million tons of stubble. 100 million tons. The amount of carbon dioxide that total Indian transport produces is 270 million tons. Parali burning, 149 million tons. Indian transport, 270 million tons. Totally avoidable. Every year, 17,000 square kilometers of agricultural land next to Delhi is on fire for a month. Next to Delhi, 12 times the size of Delhi. And we think MSP doesn't bother us because we are living in Delhi. It won't touch us. Well, it is touching you. The amount of money you are spending on treating respiratory diseases as a direct fallout of this is 150 times more than the amount that is needed to buy happy seeder machines to take care of the Parali stubble, $70 million. That's it. That's all that is required. And ad budget of Punjab, central government and Haryana, $1,300 million. That is why I say we are a banana republic ever since we became a republic. But again, to conclude, हम बने ही banana republic हैं, लेकिन हमें ही तो इसको republic बनाना है. So ladies and gentlemen, unless we ourselves realize what our role is, and if it is confused, we have to change that and then force the state to change its confused role, I'm afraid we are looking at 2047 without even noticing that glass half full is present. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure having you here. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please give up for the gentleman once again? Now, I would like to invite Mr. Shurveer Singh Shekhawat, Head of Urban and Swadesh Banking, Government Business and Wholesale Deposit, AU Small Finance Bank. I invite you on stage, sir. Please give him a huge round of applause. I request him to present the memento. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause. Thank you so much, Mr. Shekhawat. And thank you so much, sir, once again.
My only question is, will I be invited again?
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite on stage Dr. Vikram Sampath. Dr. Vikram Sampath, can we please have you on stage, sir? Give him a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And to present him the memento, I would like to invite Mr. Arjun Soni from AB Capital, Head B2B Sales, Digital Ecosystem, AB Finance Limited. Round of applause for Mr. Soni, please. Can we please have the memento? Huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Mr. Soni. And Dr. Sampath, thank you once again for joining us.